blame it on that. We had one here in this room that went late. It's the OMA Awards. Was anybody here for the OMA Awards? Other than MediaPost people? Well, anyhow, congratulations to all the winners. They'll all be published soon. I have some notes. We're running a little late this morning, as I think you might have heard an announcement from Jeff Lochner, President of MediaPost, that some of the panelists were running slow. So I don't want to defeat the purpose of me being up here, but I might say a bit more than I would have said otherwise if we were able to start on time. Bear with me, because I don't usually get to give an extended commercial for MediaPost, but I'm going to give a little bit extended. Don't worry. That's really the worst thing in public speaking, isn't it? Really, to say I'm going to stretch it out. So in any event, we've just gotten some research back, MediaPost. It's our 20th anniversary this year. We've found in our research that among the trade sources that the industry goes to learn industry news and information, we are the leader. Now, we've heard lots of statistics in the political world where people take credit for things and you don't really know what the data is behind it. If anybody's curious, we can share the research results with you. Our VP Sales over here, Seth Oilman, would be happy to show it to you. So MediaPost is read by half of everyone in the audience, in the relevant trade audience, every single day. And in terms of sort of monthly readership and awareness, it's essentially 100%. This is a universe study, not our list, but a list put together by Perceptions Group, who studies the industry, I think 2 or 3 or 4 times a year in a sort of syndicated report. This was a separate study we had them do for us. So we are justly proud, I think. If anybody listened to the debate last night, there was a lot of, I'm proud of this and I'm proud of that, not to cast aspersions on any one character. Well, we're proud of that. So 20 years and coming from nowhere to a position actually of the leading source of news and information in the industry. So I wanted to go on and on a bit about that. Turning our attention to what our activities are this week and in the near future. So we have 3 days of shows following the OMA Awards, which took place last night. We have OMA Programmatic today. Tomorrow we're doing 2 shows, OMA Video in the morning, OMA VR, AR, virtual reality, alternative reality in the afternoon. Then on Thursday we do OMA Social in the morning and a new show on bots and chat in the afternoon. So all of it's great content, all programmed by our editors for the benefit of our audience, and we hope that you might consider joining us in the next couple of days. We've been on a programmatic roadshow this year. This is part of the programmatic roadshow. We started out in San Francisco, Boston, Los Angeles earlier in the year. We were in New York in May, and we're back again this week. Well, today, with the OMA Programmatic Show. We're going on to 2 shows in October, one in Austin. It's our Publishing Insider Summit, which circles around the issue of programmatic from the point of view of the publisher. And then we have a TV and Programmatic Insider Summit the next week in Mohonk. Anybody know what Mohonk is? One person. Okay, 3 people. It's actually what county is it in? Dutchess County. It's just across the river, the Hudson River, and it's an easy, 1.5 to 2 hour drive from New York. It's a beautiful resort in the Pocono Mountains. Is that the right mountains, or is it the Catskills? Look, I'm sorry, I'm from the Midwest. What mountains are they in? What? There is such a thing? What's it close to? Ulster. It's close to Ulster, right? Anyhow, it's beautiful. I've been there. I can get there, but I can't describe to you how to get there. And it's only an hour and a half, 2 hours. And so we're there for 3 days in the midst of the fall color, and you might be interested in that if you're interested in TV programmatic. And then we round out our programmatic roadshow in Denver in November. So I don't know if, I mean, in a way it's aimed more at those people who might be potential sponsors, because most of the audience isn't going to travel from New York to Denver, but perhaps some of those people who are providing services to the industry might think about putting one of these shows on their future plans. Well, I've been trying to stretch it out a little bit, but I haven't got much more, unless you have questions, which is the classic crutch that I hope we don't see it here today, that when the moderator runs out of time, they go to questions from the audience, right? So I want to thank our sponsors before I get off the stage, and I'll introduce the MC. We have video, well, here they all are. Digital Trends is the title sponsor. We have Video Amp, Atticus, Admore, Gum Gum, Pulse Point, and Stack. So we obviously sponsor, we're in the ad business. We're all in the ad business one way or the other. Sponsorships are extremely important to shows like this. They make it possible for all of us to be here, and we appreciate all of their support. I'm going to introduce now somebody who I've known for many years, almost his whole life. In fact, his whole life. It's my son, Ross. He's actually worked for MediaPost, I think, pretty much 20 years if you count summer work, the whole 20 years if you count summer work, which you should. And he's been on our editorial side, and he's been a programmer of many shows for us over the years. And he's programmed this show, and he's going to be your MC and lead you through the day. So, Ross Fadner.
Thank you, Dad. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to OMA Programmatic. I am Ross Fadner, as you heard, Event Programming Director for MediaPost. And you are at Redeeming the Robots, OMA Programmatic. So in our overview for this show, we took a position that programmatic advertising has had something of a tough year, as it's often cast as the implicit main villain in digital advertising's big threats: fraud, viewability, transparency, ad blocking. I've also seen it blamed for the growing friction between marketers and ad agencies, as well as the general decline in media revenue of certain sectors. Indeed, to read some media reports, it was beginning to sound as though programmatic were the scourge of the advertising industry. Is programmatic advertising really the scourge of the ad industry? I suppose it depends on whom you ask, and you might take that person's answer with a grain of salt. Anyway, especially if their job is directly in the line of fire as programmatic continues its forward march. Well, fresh data published yesterday by eMarketer points out that programmatic display spending, which includes mobile, is currently exceeding growth projections in the US by several billion more than previously projected. The researcher projects total programmatic display spending of $25.2 billion in 2016, representing 73% of all display spending in the US. 73%. That's up from basically 0 5 years ago. Mobile programmatic, which overtook desktop programmatic last year, has been the main driver, accounting for a whopping $17.7 billion of total programmatic display spending on the back of 66% year-over-year growth. By next year, eMarketer claims that mobile will account for 3/4 of programmatic ad spending. Even much more expensive video, which has made all kinds of headlines for fraud, viewability, and other issues, will have seen spending more than double this year to $6.2 billion, or 60% of total digital video spending. So, scourge of the industry, huh? Well, regardless of how you view it, programmatic advertising has absolutely an enormous future ahead of it. I'll stop short of saying it's the future of advertising. However, as programmatic moves into OTT, digital out-of-home, radio, eventually linear TV, it might be the future of buying media at scale. This, by the way, is not to say that programmatic is where it needs to be, or that things like audience verification, targeting, and creative don't need to drastically improve. They do. But if we really are only in the third inning, as Mark Zagorski, CEO of Exalate, told MediaPost's own Toby Elkin yesterday, she, by the way, is editor of our Real-Time Daily, and she's sitting right there. She'll be doing an interview later this morning. And we're already at $25 billion. Well, maybe media has a brighter future ahead of it than we all thought. In any event, today we will put this new growth and the aforementioned problems that plague programmatic under the microscope. We will look at how programmatic data and targeting can fuel a cross-channel approach, and we'll also delve into newer formats like OTT, out-of-home, radio, and native. Thank you for joining us today. With that, I'd like to invite our first panel to join the stage. In our opener this morning, we're taking a look at what to expect from programmatic in Q4 and beyond. And I can think of no better person to lead this discussion than MediaPost's own man who needs no introduction, our editor-in-chief, Joe Mandisi, who is not here yet. He'll be here shortly. But in any event, I'd like to invite the panel up to the stage, and I'll be a proxy for Joe until he gets here. All right, thank you. Work and what you do.
Fantastic. Good morning, everyone. My name is Vincent Barej. I'm VP of Publisher Development for Mnet in New York. I essentially oversee our relationships with all supply partners in the programmatic landscape.
Great.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Eklund. I'm the founder and CEO of Cicerone. We're a digital agency in Minneapolis. Just celebrated our 21st year as a pure digital agency, so we're now legal in all 50 states.
Oh, congratulations.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Doug Grummett. I'm SVP of Integrated Media at AMP Agency. I'm responsible for overall communication strategy, media product across our 3 offices in Boston, New York, and LA. And programmatic, obviously, is a big, big part of our integrated media capability. So excited to be here this morning to chat with everybody.
Great.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Lavasek. I'm the Vice President for Automated Monetization at The Weather Company. That basically means our global programmatic business. So I'm representing the sell side of the equation here, representing publishers and media owners.
Hi, I'm Mike Moreau. I run Link, which is Crux's data cloud. We connect the buyers and sellers of data directly. One of the core use cases of that data is programmatic execution. So we have a pretty unique view into what's happening programmatically in the market without actually participating in that.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here today. Wanted to start by borrowing from a little bit from the panel description. So it alleges here that prices are going up across the board for programmatic. Does that matter?
Well, yes, it does matter. Prices go up or down, that always matters to someone, right? Mm-hmm. I want to say that being said, prices going up in Q4, not a new phenomenon, right? We've all had to deal with it for decades now. And so I think the real question is, how do we leverage programmatic to actually address that? Get the best value out of it for advertisers, for the publishers, for everyone in that kind of chain of value here. And I think that's really what we should be talking about, right?
Okay.
Absolutely, and they should go up. We're talking about a format that was largely given away for a long time, and then it went to pennies in the RTB space. And not to go down nostalgia lane of the information superhighway, some of you might remember that phrase, but I remember when Google launched AdWords. You anybody remember how much a click cost? I think it was 15 cents, 13 cents a click, right? And so now we have people buying, I don't know, auto insurance or something like that for $30.
Yeah.
So when you look at CPMs of $2, $3 for 1,000, and we have people perfectly willing to pay $30 for a click for one person, I think we're just seeing the very beginning of a proper maturation of this market.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And I think back to the original question, it does matter. In a dynamic marketplace, there are options, right? There are abilities to pivot from, one set of inventory, a particular data set to another to drive the efficiencies that you're looking for to meet specific client KPIs, specific goals and objectives. To Vincent's earlier point, price indexes increasing in Q4 isn't a new phenomenon. I thought this was a really interesting panel discussion to have juxtaposed against a political year, which have historically driven up cost indices in traditional and even digital media. So while I don't believe programmatic is a race to the bottom as it potentially was 4, 5, even maybe 6 years ago. As quality prices rise, I feel like agencies, brands, and clients have options to pivot as the marketplace evolves in real time to meet the goals and objectives of clients and brands.
So prices going up is good. What else would a publisher say on this panel? And I think it's actually, I'll even take the other side of the argument, that I actually think it's reflective of the marketplace maturing, and it's probably good for buyers in a way. In my view, what's happening is that we just opened up talking about an eMarketer report where there's now $20 billion or some incredibly large number trying to find a home, right? So buyers are trying to deploy those dollars. So that's one thing. There's a huge wave of demand coming. At the same time, I think all the data that we now have, things like viewability and targeting, I don't think anyone's going to stand up here and say that's perfect, but it certainly has improved. And the result of that is that buyers are putting more dollars against a smaller pool of impressions, and it's driving the price up for those impressions. So what we see in our inventory is that our absolutely best stuff, the highly viewable top units that perform well, it seems like there's no ceiling on that price. At the same time, there are units that candidly are more in the mid-range or the lower tier of the inventory, and those units are having some challenges. And frankly, as a publisher, we might remove them over time.
Nice. Oh, Mike?
Yeah, well, prices have to go up. I mean, if marketers want quality environments to display advertising and communicate with consumers, you have to have premium publishers thrive. And with the lower CPMs through programmatic that we've seen historically, and as more and more dollars shift there, if we maintained those low rates, the premium publishers could not survive. So it's absolutely critical that those rates increase. Also, targeting is so much better than it's ever been. So we're actually seeing our clients' ROI on programmatic investments increase, not decrease. And again, we're neutral. We don't have a dog in this fight. We just see the data. And even at higher CPMs, programmatic ROI is absolutely increasing.
Great. Well, thank you guys. Joe Mandisi has arrived, so I'd like to invite him to take the stage. How about a round of applause for Editor-in-Chief?
Yes, that's the first time I got applause for being late to something, so I apologize to everyone. But thank you for getting things started, Ross. So I'm glad you all got that off your chest on kind of the temperature gauge. I want to step back, though, and I want to talk about what we're really talking about here in terms of defining programmatic. It sounds to me like we're really talking about technology and data designed to facilitate selling of premium publishing inventory. But the programmatic marketplace, when it first was created, really started as a biddable media marketplace. And it seems like the efforts over the last several years have been designed to move it away from that. So I'd like to ask you all to kind of weigh in on the idea of the fact that there is also this second market going out there, call it a secondary market, call it open marketplaces. And I'd really like to understand how you see the role of that in the way your business models work, and whether we're just moving away from it completely. And then I have a follow-up question for you about that.
Very good question. I would start by saying that you're absolutely right. There's over the past few years, we've seen a tremendous move up funnel, I want to say, up the funnel for programmatic, and to your point, really leveraging the technology and the data available to marketers today to really get a combination of the efficiency, the scale, the speed of decisioning that programmatic offers with the premium nature of the media supply that is available out there. It's definitely grown over the past few years. I don't necessarily think it means that there's no longer a role to play for the open market or the second market, or however you want to call it. Ultimately, the mix between the two, whether we qualify one as programmatic direct and the other as kind of that open exchange market, the mix is going to depend on KPIs. There's not a one-size-fits-all with programmatic, and that's precisely why it works. That's why we can see that, as we were saying earlier, that price to performance ratio get better over time, because we learn and then we fine-tune. As far as Amnet is concerned, we also don't leave it all up to the algorithm. We like to have really, really skilled people and talented people actually oversee those activations. As far as the open exchange, I think it still will play a big role in programmatic activations now and moving forward, but probably will be relegated more so to some form of direct response type of activation or performance-based media.
All right, so it's still part of the mix. And Andrew, you represent both buy and sell side perspectives, so you're probably a very neutral voice on this.
Well, I do, and you know, a lot of people criticize publishers for being slow to technology, and if you look at the balance sheet, there's a reason why. I can get better rates if I sell direct, and so all of a sudden now the giant sucking sound is the going towards electronic buying platforms, and so at the same time they're saying, well, okay, I'm getting good rates over here. I have advertisers who are willing to do those deals. In some case, in some sort of an upfront, so I get my cash. And now you're telling me I have to go over here, where essentially you're taking 400% margin out of the equation. I can't run a business operation that way. And so I think what's happened, obviously, is on the buyer's side, the technology is not going away. This is the way marketers want to buy advertising, and publishers have to make money, or else they can't attract the premium viewers. So really, to your point, it's going to come down to KPIs or some sort of a direct response. And we have a whole new generation of CMOs who are moving into that suite. And they grew up with this sort of technology. And so, they want to have proof that the people are there. And on both sides of the equation, there's never really been proof. There was never proof really on the direct side, and there was never really complete proof because of fraud and viewability and all the other problems on the other side. So I think this center spot is really where it's all going to happen, and it's really in those PMPs or some other sort of device where premium publishers can get together along with premium advertisers and start to use the tools that are available to them. I'm not sure what you call that market, but that's going to be there.
Yeah, you don't all have to weigh in on that. I just wanted to get kind of a grounding here because I wanted to get into, it seems like the market is bifurcated now, so it's still part of the mix. It's a lot of DR and performance-based marketers who are using openness. The question I have for all of you, especially the premium publishers, is you're all participating in a universe of audience impressions out there. So how can you kind of ignore OpenRTB? Isn't it part of the mix because it's still impressions being served to the consumer?
Yeah, no, we're not ignoring it at all. I just think that as a publisher, it comes down to your yield and revenue strategies against these different deal types and channels, right? So if someone wants to come in and buy up a big chunk of my inventory in a guaranteed deal on January 1, that's great. We have processes and models to manage against that. At the same time, we have an open exchange business where that market fluctuates on a daily basis. I think what's really happening here is that the technology has automated all this, and now we're getting down to what are the business relationships, what are the deal types that these tools allow us to use. And from my point of view, it's pretty simple. It's basically you're guaranteeing me something up front, or we're going with more of a spot open market type approach. And there's a few flavors in the middle, but those are kind of the two poles of the spectrum.
So it's funny, when you describe it that way, it sounds like the way media was always bought and sold. You always had premium markets, and you always had DR markets. So in TV, the most premium was the upfront, where you were buying guaranteed most premium allocation of inventory. But you also had DR going on that was buying it on 5 cents, 10 cents on the dollar, because stations needed to sell out their inventory, and they created channel distinctions. So I think when I look at this marketplace, which is still pretty young, really, and it's evolved really quickly, it seems like we kind of got to a point where everything was blurred together, and now we're breaking it apart again. So my question for you is, how do we know it's really rising? If there's all this activity going on in the open marketplace, how do you define the marketplace? In preparation for this panel, I looked at the RTB 500, which we've been publishing for several years now. It's now at 50. A little over 50. It started at 500. So in the span of about 4, 5, 6 years, that much market value has declined in the total RTB portion of the marketplace. And I know it's a tight season now with political and a lot of political DSPs. So what I'm really asking you is, how do we know pricing has really gone up when you look at the totality, or is it just the way you look at premium market pricing?
I mean, I think overall we're seeing that the pricing is trending up I mean, Q4, we know it will, again, we know that it will be trending up. We have a big election coming up. Obviously, Q4 is big for the holidays, retail, and all those different categories. So we know the prices are going up. And I think, generally speaking, looking at pricing history, looking back a year or so, or 2 or 3 years, we're seeing the same trends. There's still competition that is increasing towards the end of the year because people have to wrap up their budgets, people have to hit their numbers, and you have a big holiday season coming up. So we're seeing that across the board. I think pricing is not necessarily going up because there's that move towards more premium, and we can spend more time trying to discuss what premium means. Right. But we're seeing that across the board, even in the open exchange, right? The prices are going to go up in Q4, even on the open exchange. Because to your point earlier, it's programmatic is really focused on the audience. And to your point, that's why there is still a role for open exchange to play in that mix. It's because audience are going to be found there as well. Now, by the very nature of how the open exchange works, you might see some negative impact maybe on some viewability metrics or maybe on some quality metrics, and that will affect price and performance in the end. But overall, I think we're definitely seeing across the board that the prices are going up, and it's not limited to the use of premium programmatic or PMP or however we would call it. It's really across the board.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add to that, I totally agree. I think, for us from the agency side, having a lens specifically into our client business is sort of the tie that binds as it relates to that question. We can look historically at price indices on a quarterly basis, on a daily basis, to see how these price indices are rising over time. To Vincent's point, we are seeing fundamentally prices rise. I believe we'll continue to see those prices rise in Q4, whether it's open RTB, whether it's things like PMPs or automated guarantee platforms. But fundamentally, and without getting into sort of how we define premium inventory, being able to sort of baseline these price indexes, compare, and then react to a dynamic marketplace gives clients a lot of opportunity, again, to work towards those specific KPIs.
I also just add one point. I think it's interesting that we got to remember what's happened over the last 2 years, where there's been an incredible focus on fraud and viewability and impression quality and inventory quality. And I think what that's done, I mean, if we were to read the headline 6 months ago, it was all about exchanges cutting inventory because it was low quality or non-human traffic. And I think that's now starting to cycle through. And we're now entering a phases where I think the exchanges are actually cleaner and better. And at the same time, marketers and agencies have been looking to pull the best inventory out of exchanges into premium deals of some flavor. So in some sense, what's left in the open exchange, I would guess, is probably shrunk from a volume point of view. And maybe that's driving the price up there. I don't know.
Okay. Could it also be seasonality, that we do have $3 billion in political spending going on right now, and those guys, the political DSPs, are completely neutral to content. They only care about voter registration and undecided. So they're going after every impression they can. So will this drop off the cliff after the elections?
No, I don't think so. I think Jeremy hit the nail on the head. There is a change in the supply and demand curves, and it's not just about demand. As more and more people use mobile devices for browsing and desktop continues to decline, we're going to see that decrease in inventory continue. I think the upward trend in prices will absolutely continue far beyond the election season.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is an assumption that's been put out there or not, but let's not assume that advertisers aren't willing to pay for quality audience. And so this idea that our price is rising or not, I mean, it really, again, it goes back to being a mature market. And I believe that advertisers are absolutely willing to pay more for people who are validated people within the target market that they're trying to attract. I think we're getting out of the tonnage business, unless you're maybe Coca-Cola. And other than that, it's really all about if you can prove that it's quality. And the thing that I find really interesting is that programmatic, or really any sort of platform that has data attached to it, is a value-add platform. You get data, you get a product that you can't get through some of the direct deals. So I've actually worked with clients to do a programmatic campaign just to get access to third-party data that they can layer into their own data. So essentially, I might not be buying performance, but I'm actually buying the outcome, which may or may not be KPI-driven. It's really driven based upon intelligence that we're going to gather. And that, to me, that has been way undervalued in all of this is the quality of
Explain
the
that.
data.
So if it's not a performance KPI, what is this intelligence outcome?
Just the either it's demographic or behavioral data that I can layer into other sources of data that
So
they
you're
already have.
scraping and building your intelligence.
Right. I'm just trying to get a new data set that I can layer into maybe their own in-house analytics or their CRM or something like that, so that just gives them the means to do other things that they're already doing better.
Sorry, I guess I completely agree with your point around advertisers willing to pay more if they know that it will reach the right audience. And I think that, as I was saying earlier, as long as we can still show that price to performance ratio is actually improving by leveraging the right technology and the right data, that's really where programmatic has an opportunity to shine. And that's why there's been such a push towards the kind of upper funnel activations in programmatic, because now I think advertisers are feeling confident that they can deliver those upper funnel metrics leveraging that technology, that data. And it's true, programmatic will essentially help marketers and advertisers spend their dollars in a much smarter way. So maybe that CPM will go up, but that performance might be multiplied. Right, and that's really where we're trying to get. It's not just trying to sell the technology for the sake of it. I think that the outcomes are obviously very, very important. So price alone, we can't just look at price alone. Essentially, we really have to look at that entire equation altogether.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the point about, and if I mince words, apologies, but potentially on the buy side, investing in the open exchange as a means to better build a connected data ecosystem. So as the buy side, agencies, brands get savvier in terms of the data that they can leverage to inform future activations, there potentially is a role for investing in things like the open exchange, solely for the purpose of collecting and capturing data that could be used for future activations. So things like that could, I don't want to say artificially increase prices, but at the end of the day, you may see strategic intent in terms of investment as a means to build a better data ecosystem for future activations.
I just want to comment on that point because I think that's an interesting point. I have a feeling Michael might be interested too. That suggests to me that there is an emerging market for data, right? So in some sense, the buyers are less interested in the actual impression and more interested in what the data might tell them in the future. At whether we actually believe this really strongly, right? And we think that data is a key to all this. And I could see a world where there is a market purely based on data where publishers might sell data directly to advertisers. In fact, it's happening in some cases.
So Michael,
That's what I do. That's my job. Yeah, thank you. No, it's absolutely emerging. It's real. It does happen today, but I would say it's really taken off in the last 6 months or so, because there's still this divide between publishers and marketers as to how you actually value that data. Are coming together, but I still find that they're tied to big media commitments. Data as a standalone asset is just hard to value. We do help people with that, but this isn't a plug for CruxLink. No, seriously, media is something everyone can get their heads around. So as marketers make bigger and bigger media commitments, especially upfront programmatically, in exchange, publishers are giving them access to certain data sets. And yeah, it's absolutely a market that's thriving right now.
If you don't mind, one more comment about data, and I think that's the problem that we've seen with data is that people use it to try and optimize one channel. So they use the data to optimize their display channel. So when I'm talking about working with clients on using data, I'm talking about helping them get better segmentation on their email campaigns, helping them test their search budgets better. So it's that cross-channel testing and data sets that programmatic buys. We used to do it with paid search all the time. Right? You do a test campaign in search because you could turn it on, turn it off, get some performance. And programmatic gives you more scale than search does, and maybe currently at a lower cost and probably for a longer time. But that, to me, is what's really interesting is the savvy marketers that are saying, I'm going to use this channel, and I'm going to get it at scale, and I'm going to take that data and I'm going to layer it into my email program, right? And that's really where they're seeing the return. And they say to themselves, boy, I don't think I would have performed, because if email still has a 42x ROI. I know this isn't an email panel, but let's just say, right, like that if email has a 42x and the other ones have all worse, then I might as well use the less expensive form of data or less expensive form of media to layer in data to make my best performing channel work better. And I think that's where you're seeing data. And if I can get that data out of it, then it goes back to the pricing discussion is I'll buy that data or I'll buy that channel all day long and I'll pay for it.
Well, that's a very sober experience because your clients aren't just buying programmatic display or mobile, they're buying consumer reach. So I just want to stick with data one more time and then we can move on. But so data was always the currency of media buying, whether it was GRPs in television or what we're talking about here. But is this push now for agencies and brands and programmatic traders to acquire audience data and insights and intelligence accelerated by the fact that there's a couple of big walled gardens that have created opacity and that there's a more compelling need for people to put together a profile through third and second party data?
Yeah, there's no doubt. That's a huge driving force because people do want to use data on other platforms. So, Facebook and Google, they have better audience data than anybody. I mean, it really is fantastic. But you can only use it if you're buying media on their properties. As soon as you want to use that data elsewhere, if you want to do experience management or content recommendation with that data, you can't. So you need to acquire that data elsewhere, and we are seeing the most savvy marketers build up really unique proprietary data sets from multiple sources so they can use it for many different reasons, not just buying through Facebook or Google.
Yeah, I'll throw a comment on that too, because I think, to me, I'm really interested in this market. I saw you kept looking my way when you mentioned the data so maybe we can talk. But I think there is a real hunger for this, and I think Michael said it well, is that the issue right now is we don't necessarily know how to price and sell this. The classic model is we're going to go ahead and bundle some first-party data. Right. It's Facebook audience data, it's our weather data, it's location data, and we're going to sell you media with that. I think there's a really interesting model where we start to unbundle that. The problem in that is just how is that priced and how is that sold? And I'm really interested in these markets kind of developing because I think it could be a new revenue stream for publishers if they were willing to lean into it and try it. Sure.
Do you still market Weather FX?
Yep, sure. We still have weather triggers, location triggers, all that.
But that's a separate product people could buy. Okay. Historically, premium media publishers gave that data away, like Condé Nast, et cetera, to elevate the value of their buy. So just before we move off of this, sounds almost like restraint of trade if these couple of big walled gardens control so much of that visibility in the marketplace. We're in an era now where transparency covers so many things, but that's one of them too. Do you guys see any kind of change in the future, whether it's regulatory or self-regulatory, or is this just natural market forces that will continue?
I'd vote for market forces. I think there's a lot of emerging companies out there who are looking at ways to, listen, the Facebook and Google data sets are tops, right? There's no kind of competing with that. But I imagine as an agency person or a marketer or a buyer, there's probably scenarios where you can certainly test other data sets that maybe aren't the absolute cream of the crop, but still effective for your own campaigns. And as that market starts to get traction, you could almost imagine creating a little competition with the walled gardens, which I think is probably good for the market.
I think you also just have to look at the numbers. I mean, you guys know this number for sure, but I mean, how many companies, Fortune 5,000 companies, have set up a DMP for themselves, right? I mean, it's low teens. I don't know what it is, but it's very small. And so I think marketers alone are just for the first time actually getting their heads around the fact that they own their own data and they have the opportunity to buy more.
It's funny because they probably all have CRM databases, but they don't.
They don't know how to use them.
We, just to dovetail off that point, we spend a lot of time trying to educate, advise clients on how to stand up their own DMP, how they can leverage those CRM databases if, again, they have that data infrastructure in place. So from the buy side, the world of direct linear media has pivoted more towards this role of sort of data science, data infrastructure, data ecosystem, and advising clients on how they stand it up, how they utilize data, and what the potential benefits are, particularly through the lens or in contrast to the walled gardens that exist and how they can and cannot leverage Facebook and Google data.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question, then I'll open it to the audience if you have any. And this is the look forward to the near future and possibly the distant future. So it sounds like there's been a lot of growing up in programmatic in a short period of time, and that in an ironic way, we've kind of moved back to the way things have historically moved with bifurcated, stratified markets running across, commoditized to ultra premium and data playing a role. So it's ironic to me, it sounds just like pre-digital marketplace, but so I want to get a sense on where we go next. So is it just going to continue to follow these silos? And in particular, I'd like you to comment because the Digital Content Next announced this initiative yesterday to form a new industry coalition to organize a premium marketplace for publishers. Is that the right place for that to be, or should it just be natural market forces again?
Well, I think looking ahead, what we can definitely expect is that that pendulum is still going to happen. We're going to go back and forth. As marketers, as buyers and sellers, I think everyone likes certainty. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. There's been a big push for programmatic, and to your point, it really started much more in the scale and the tonnage business, and now we're really moving up the funnel and going towards premium and much more data-centric activations with a bigger focus on quality. And the way that this market is going to settle, to your point, is going to go back to what we already know. So that stratification of the market is going to happen again. I think one of the big challenges that we are going to be addressing, obviously from a qualitative standpoint, is a consumer experience, right? We're today more than ever functioning as an ecosystem, and we've somewhat neglected the consumer. And I think that the consumer experience is what is going to be driving the next challenge, the next round of innovation in the market, and that's going to be going.
It came out of shitty. And I think we're moving towards quality inventory and hopefully quality creative. And what I mean by that is we're certainly moving beyond the banner. You can already see higher performing units are not standard A/B, banner display. And so I think that we're going to see not only premium inventory moving into better technology, but better technology moving into better content. And I think that's great for everybody, whether you're a marketer or an agency or anyone else. We know obviously that video has a great pull, but I think just long form content in the B2B marketplace in particular, that's wide open green space, not only just for programmatic, but just for content marketers. And so I really do, and maybe I'm just trying to do this before I retire, but I really think this stuff matters. I think content matters, I think creative matters, and I think that the technology, while largely invented by mathematicians in Silicon Valley, are now just starting to play well with marketers. And so I think you said earlier, I believe we're just at the very beginning of all this, and that Luma landscape is going to get thinner and thinner as better players, as the bad players get weeded out, better players come in. There's going to be tons of M&A activity in that space. So not to say it's all going to be Facebook and Google in the end, but it might be only 6, 7, 8 companies.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with the premise that the consumer is sort of at the center of this. In terms of the original question, where this premium marketplace should reside, I do believe that market dynamic, market forces should sort of dictate or drive where and how this sort of lives within the real-time marketplace. But a couple of the points made previously about sort of the breadth of programmatic, it oftentimes gets lumped in or stereotyped as a quote-unquote media activation. But the reality is that the ability to create these personalized experiences at scale through better messaging, through better content, whether it's short form, long form, those types of things are ultimately going to drive that quality designation, right? So putting the consumer journey, the consumer experience at sort of the center of that quality dynamic, I think is incredibly important. Different audiences are going to be interested in different things, in different formats and different devices, and you're going to see those cost indices rise against specific segments versus others. So, at the end of the day, not losing sight of the consumer and that overarching or holistic journey is incredibly important.
I'll comment quickly because we were one of the launch sponsors of the DCN project, which we think is a great project. And I like the point about, listen, we believe in premium publishing, right? The way this works is we drive revenue through advertising, and we use that money to pay meteorologists to create a very good weather forecast and a good experience in using our products. So it's important that that model works all the way through, because if you don't, and I think the big fear and the message from the DCN announcement is that you can get in trouble as you go down the long tail, right? Maybe it is too long, and maybe we need to go back to a ComScore 100, 500, whatever the right number is. So we support that, and I really like the point about it just being an important kind of principle of the industry to have high-quality content, high-quality advertising. So that was the reason that we signed on with DCN. We love technology, but at the same time, we also believe in the principles of premium publishing.
Yeah, fully agree. Nothing else to add.
Okay. So are there any questions about the temperature? We actually have somebody from the Weather Channel here, so you can...
Check the app. Don't ask me.
Did you have a question?
Was that a question?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, here, just wait for the mic if you don't mind. Thanks. Please just tell us who you're with and.
I'm with Weather. Amanda Dean, I'm with the Weather Company. So I'm curious, we have all this data. One of the things that we've been seeing from the buy side is DCO, or the Dynamic Creative Optimization. So I'm curious from the agency folks if you're seeing marketers kind of willing to take that on, and if you've seen a lot of success with it.
We have seen a crawl towards it, I think, to be honest. It has been a slow adoption rate from a brand and a client perspective. And to be a little introspective, the agency world itself, speaking through the agencies I've been with, have probably been a little slow to adopt it as well. I can say strategically it is something that we are recommending and pushing very hard with the clients that we work on. I think the conversation we just had as it relates to putting the consumer at the center of what we put out into the marketplace, whether it's programmatic or non-programmatic, that experience has to be optimized. It has to be optimal. That includes data, that includes targeting, that includes messaging and content. So we are pushing it. The adoption rate, to be candid, I think is slower than all aspects of the ecosystem would like it to be. And there's an educational component too, right? When you look at a traditional agency model, it's not, back to my earlier point about programmatic being stereotyped as media, we have to educate the creative folks, the production folks, and that takes time. But again, the adoption rate has been slower than I think we all would hope for.
As an agency, yes, I think there's an interesting challenge in all of that. I mean, there are a lot of agencies, of course, neither of ours, they can barely get change orders done on regular sized banners. So, if you want to talk about adding a layer of dynamic content into that, it's the same thing. Again, I come back to email. Dynamic email, of course, works way better. It just takes a lot of thought process. And I think it comes down to sort of people investing in creative. I mean, a dynamically generated ad unit is a three-dimensional ad unit. It's taking in data. It's swapping in elements based upon behaviors and targeting and all of this. That in and of itself could be as grand as a microsite. Again, that's a word I hate, but you know what I'm saying. And so I think it's really a question of, I think agencies like ours would love to sell that. I think we need arguments from the others what the ROI is going to be. If I can show a significant ROI in that kind of unit, which by the way, I fundamentally believe there is, then I need to have budget, because at the end of the day, somebody's got to get paid. And that's how that works. And we're trying to find better ways to make money in the agency business. And until that happens, it really comes down to how is it going to get financed? And we have to have good arguments to make for that.
I think it really depends on the vertical. We've seen data-driven DCO really take off with automotive advertisers, but most other verticals have been, really slow out of the gate.
If I could ask a follow-up question related to that. So for a couple hundred years, the onus on ad exposure has been on the media suppliers to bring the audience attention. So now we have this world where it's all decoupled, and now creative is a part of the equation. There was a conference last week on time and attention, and a lot of publishers are starting to move to time spent models. The time spent model kind of puts the onus also on creative, right? If you have, to your point, shitty creative, it's not going to work as well. Are the agencies and the brands now more accountable in that process when you can do dynamic creative optimization and things like that?
agencies are grabbing at straws for legitimacy. I mean, let's just, it's been a bad year for especially the large agencies coming from an independent. But, you know, the fact of the matter is that, yeah, I just think that we have to figure out a balance between, you know, where we're going to put the eggs that we have in the basket, you know, and I think it's just it's been a difficult time, I think, for the agencies to figure out exactly how to prioritize against all the changing in the shifts.
Let me refine the question.
Yeah.
So if you can programmatically identify the right creative, does some of the well, first of all, will that become part of the programmatic execution? And secondly, does it put more of the onus on the brand and the agency to make sure they're delivering the right creative?
I mean, it probably does. I think it comes down to, first and foremost, really harnessing the data that is going to be informing those decisions. That being said, I think creative should reside with creative. I think it has to be a collaboration across the entire ecosystem again. I think, especially with programmatic, we tend to really look at the technology and the data kind of achieving everything, but we have media people, we have publishers, sellers, we have behind DCO is not all of a sudden to just let the technology do absolutely everything. To your point, I think it's going to be a joint responsibility in the delivery of that attention, that time spent with the creative, making sure that, yes, the data, the audience, the technology actually serve that purpose. It's not going to be just an agency thing. It's not going to be a publisher thing. I think the onus is going to have to be shared across the board.
By the way, I trumped your last answer. I totally brain freezed. So time spent, really bad metric, unless you're talking about longer form content. A white paper, great time spent. If you're talking about a website, bad time spent, right?
I'm talking about exposure to your advertising message.
Well, yeah, but I think that time is relative to, it could be poor creative is a lot more as time. I don't think it's the right measure. I think the ultimate measure is back to KPI.
Right.
And back to whether or not you're reaching a customer who takes an action that you want. And time at that point is not a quotient.
In this case, it will definitely, to your point, have to be a correlation between the time spent and the performance driven from it, right? So just like pricing, we were talking about pricing earlier. We can't just look at pricing in a silo. We can't look at time spent in a silo. It doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, this is probably a whole nother panel discussion, but Interpublic a few weeks back released a study they did showing the effectiveness and lift from campaigns that had below 50% pixel presentation on a screen, and that what they found was the time in view was more important than the amount in view. And when you start to get numbers like that coming up, it seems like time spent might not be a shitty metric. Okay.
We'll see.
That's another panel. Do we have time for anything else, or?
We've probably got to move on, but thank you, Joe. Thank you,
Okay.
panel. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to meet you.
Nice meeting you.